The word I've chosen today is standard. S-T-A-N-D-A-R-D. Okay, well, I'm a German linguist, so you might be expecting a German word. Standard is obviously an English word, but it's used in German, Standard. And in fact, it's used in most of the other European languages as well. In French, it's Standard. In Dutch, it's something like Standard. My pronunciation isn't very good. And it's used in relation to a lot of things, but in particular, what I'm interested in is the idea of a standard language. Well, you would know about rallying to the standard, rallying to the flag. So that's the original meaning of a standard, and somehow, we're not quite sure how, it moved from the meaning of people gathering round a standard or a sort of a flag that's at the front to getting the meaning of something that everyone believes in or that everyone considers as the norm or correct. And then in the 19th century in particular, a lot of things were becoming standardised as a part of the Industrial Revolution. Well, I'm interested, like a lot of linguists working on language at the moment, in what people believe the standard language to be. Well, there's one model of standardisation by a very famous Norwegian linguist called Einar Haugen, and he developed the idea that there are 4 elements to language standardisation. The first one is that you select some variety of language, some dialect or something, to be the basis of what's going to be your standard language for a particular country or nation or speech community. Then it needs to be elaborated, which means you might not have any words for the technical vocab of some particular disciplines, and so you need to go out and find those words, maybe borrowing them from English or from another language or creating them out of existing words. And then the language needs to be codified, set down in rules somehow. People have to accept it, and then this is the phase that I think we would argue most European countries are at the moment. You've got to maintain this standard, you've got to keep cultivating it so that it doesn't get out of hand. Obviously, one of the forces that control the standard language are the educational institutions and schools and so on. And once you have people who've acquired the standard language, they've got an investment in it, and they're keen to maintain the prestige, if you like, or the social power to some extent. I don't know how much of this is conscious, but once you've learnt yourself to handle the standard language well, you want it to stay that way, you want it to be fixed. Well, in Britain, I think we're probably at the looser end of things. There is an Oxford English Dictionary, but there is no grammar that everybody is aware of that they should refer to. There's no book of correct spelling that everyone knows they should refer to. If you contrast that with Germany, Germany doesn't actually have an academy, which, for example, French has, a sort of a language academy that is in charge of keeping tabs on the language. But for many years, since the early 20th century, they've had the Duden, which is the authoritative publisher's grammar and spelling guide. And so there is a book that contains all the correct spellings and all the correct spelling rules, and every single person who's got beyond basic education would be aware of the Duden. Standardisation is policed quite differently and to different extents in different countries. In Germany, it's really at the stricter end of things. If you're a Beamter, which means you're employed by the government, you're a civil servant, you are obliged by law to conform to the official spelling, which is that as stated by the Duden, which is sanctioned by the government in turn. So there the rules are strict, and I think that's probably why there's so much insecurity in Germany compared to my sense of the levels of insecurity in Britain. I guess languages are always changing, and the maintainers and upholders of the standard language are always having to reflect on to what extent they're willing to allow the language to change, and to what extent they're trying to hold it back. One of the big issues in German, doesn't sound like a big issue, but in spelling it is whether words should be written as a compound, as one word altogether, or whether they should be written separately or hyphenated. And these reflections and agonising over whether a hyphen is allowed, whether the 2 words should be written together, goes back at least 4 centuries. I guess the reason standardisation does matter is because we rely on a standard language for a huge number of things, for the publishing industry, the media, education. In German, they also use the word Hochdeutsch, High German, which used to mean the language of the uplands, which is in fact southern Germany, so the bottom part of the map as you're looking at Germany on the map. And they often contrast this term Hochdeutsch, which now means something like the standard language, with either dialects, but with also something called Umgangssprache, which means sort of everyday language. And I found when I first went to Germany, and I'm sure most people will have a story like this, that you go there and ask, they say a word that you don't know. Gucken would be a good example, which is the word to look. It's a very colloquial word. You hear it all the time in northern Germany anyway. And I spent ages trying to find out what this word was. And finally someone will say, oh yes, well it means schauen or sehen, to look. But it's not real German. It's nur Umgangssprache. It's just everyday language.